I live in the state of Washington in the Pacific Northwest. I used to work at a late-night diner on the side of the highway. I was 29 years old and worked the closing shift pretty often. The diner would close at 2 a.m., which was incredibly late considering how scarcely populated the area was. Even so, given the proximity to the highway, there would usually be at least one or two customers in the building until closing time. Having grown up in the South and moved up here, I can tell you the people are different. In the South, there's a huge emphasis on hospitality and small talk. But up here, people are kind, just not overly friendly. I feel like the air lends itself more to introversion. I used to be a waitress down south, and from experience, I can tell you the customers were a lot chattier down there. Up here, people seem to want to keep to themselves a little more. It was approaching closing time. The kitchen's last call was at 2 a.m., technically. Even though the diner was advertised to close at 2 a.m., it was really frowned upon if a customer came in and ordered something that late. But it did happen. It happened that night, as a matter of fact. There were only 2 employees in the building, myself and the chef. It was about 1:50 a.m. when a lone, heavyset man walked in. He was wearing awkwardly high jeans, a gray shirt tucked in, a brown jacket, and he had a brown mustache and glasses. I asked him if he'd like to sit at the bar or a table, and he asked for a table. He kept smiling the whole time, so I smiled back. I gave him a menu and informed him that the kitchen would close in 10 minutes. He looked at the menu for a few seconds and said he'd like a black coffee and some French toast. Around this time, he also introduced himself as Nolan. Luckily, his order was simple enough. I went into the kitchen and told the chef the order. The chef rolled his eyes slightly, and I just responded with, "I know." I stepped back out into the dining area, and Nolan waved me over. As I approached, he struck up a conversation with me, something rather unusual for folks around here at this hour. He asked me if I was from the area and started complaining about all the potholes on the roads around here. I responded, "Yeah, it's all the freezes we get in the winter," basic small talk. I told him I was from around here, but he pressed a little too specifically about where I lived. I gave him a vague general area. I never tell people exactly where I live, obviously. He said he'd just moved to town not too long ago. As he spoke, I analyzed his body language and character. He seemed like a somewhat nerdy older guy, and this may have been his idea of flirting. It didn't bother me much. I dealt with it back home in the South all the time, so I was used to it. Since this was the last customer of the night, the chef personally came out and placed his food on the counter. I went to grab it and brought it to Nolan. By this point, he had his food and coffee, and everything else was about ready to close up shop. I wiped down the counters, tables, and everything else. I stayed behind the counter, a little further away from Nolan, because I was tired of conversing with him. My social energy was drained, and I was ready to get home and go to sleep. When he finally finished his food, I dropped off his check before he even asked for it, politely non-verbally implying that we were closed and wanted to go home. He paid by card and left. The chef would be the one closing up the place, so after cleaning Nolan's table and gathering my belongings, I said goodbye to the chef and walked out to my car. There were 3 cars in the lot, mine, the chef's, and a third one that I couldn't explain. It was a silver, older-looking car, maybe a 2005 Toyota or Audi, I wasn't sure. I also couldn't tell if the windows were tinted or if it was just so dark that I couldn't see inside. I wasn't able to tell if someone was in the car or not. It was parked on the dirt closest to the highway. I wondered if it was Nolan's car. I got in my car and started heading home. The diner to my home is about 20 minutes away. While driving on the highway, a ding came from my dashboard, and the tire pressure screen popped up. I started freaking out. I didn't know how to change a tire and had never even called my roadside assistance company. The tire pressure in my rear passenger side tire was dropping rapidly all of a sudden from 20 to 10. Then I started feeling not just the steering wheel shake, but the entire car. I had to pull off the road. I came to a stop and quickly got out of the car to look at the tire. It was as flat as could be. Suddenly, as if they were just flicked on, a pair of headlights lit up the side of the road. The car approached, then slowed to a stop. I hurried back inside my car and locked the doors. I truly didn't know what to do. Then there was a light tap at my window. I looked up and saw Nolan, the man from the restaurant. He waved at me with a smile. He was wearing gloves now. For the sake of this story, I'll use a fake name for myself. Nolan said through the window, "Kathy, is that you? Are you okay?" He laughed, acting like it was such a coincidence. I felt a knot in my stomach instantly. I knew he did this. I'm not a dumbass. He motioned for me to lower the window. I lowered it, literally maybe 2 inches, just enough to speak through. He asked if I needed help. I told him I had a flat tire. He played dumb, asking me which one. I said the back passenger side. He started walking over to the other side, and at this moment, I dialed 911 on my phone. I let the phone sit on my lap as Nolan walked back to my side. He said through the window with his creepy smile that he knew how to change a flat. He asked me to step out of the car. I told him I'm waiting for my boyfriend to come help me during all of this. I heard the 911 operator speaking into the phone, but it wasn't loud enough for Nolan to hear. I tried to make it as clear as possible to the operator without being too obvious for Nolan to catch on. Suddenly, the deafening shattering of glass to my left made me scream as shards of glass fell onto my lap. Nolan had smashed my window.